we would consider starting right now. So François, if you'd like to start the recording.
Started.
Hello, my name is the other Emily, owner of Robertson Arès Gallery, and I'm here to be moderating the interview with the amazing Emily Filler, who's an artist from Toronto, who's going to be talking to us a little bit about her practice. So hi, Emily, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good. So let's sort of jump right into it. I see that right now you're at home. Normally, every time we're talking, you're at your studio. You're literally at your studio 24/7.
I'm at my studio a lot. Not in the morning, but from the afternoon till the evening.
Are you not a morning person?
No. That's like one of the greatest parts of being an artist is that I don't have to. I don't know how people have 9-to-5 jobs, really. Honestly, I don't think I'm capable of getting up early in the morning. So yeah, I'm usually there in the afternoon and evening.
So François and I had the luxury of visiting your studio actually last year, almost dates day. We were there for Art Toronto and we came to see your studio for the first time. And it was an incredible space. Can you describe us your studio a little bit?
I got really lucky because this artist cooperative that I rented studio space from before acquired old school. Rumor has it it's a school where Mean Girls was filmed, and I got half a classroom, and it was like back when classrooms had like super high ceilings and massive windows. Even like my door. It's like this giant wood door that it's huge. I've never measured it, but I would imagine, like, I think the ceiling's like 13 feet, maybe? And it has massive windows. And then because I was already working with them, when I found out about this space, I got to sort of have first pick of the, because it was before they renovated it. They're like, which space would you like? And I had a studio with east-facing, that was east facing, and I knew I liked the light, because when you get west facing you get this horrible afternoon like piercing light, and so I wanted to be on the top floor. I got to choose. I got really lucky.
I feel like you're sort of missing the most important part, which is that it's a complete chaotic yet organized mess.
Oh, it's a horrible mess. The nature of my work, the collage element of it, is that I like, having a lot of chaos around to kind of pull from. So if I'm stuck and I need a piece to put into the piece I'm working on, it's nice to have everything kind of on display. I've tried cleaning up and it just doesn't work out well.
Because I remember there were boxes full of like shreds of paper that have like flower. It was like,
yeah, there's so much stuff in there.
Flower garden just everywhere that exploded. A garden that exploded is how it felt.
I will sit on the description. Yeah, when I make those paper pieces, I'll actually just sit on the floor with boxes of paper and like dump them out. And I kind of sit in the middle and have like a nest around me, and I just like pick up paper, and it's just stacks and stacks and stacks. There's no organization at all. And I've tried organizing it, and for a brief period of time, I had this young girl come into my studio. She's like, I just want to help you. I want to work with you. And she just volunteered to work for me. And she went in there and tried to organize it. And I was like, I really don't want you to organize. So it just helps me work. I don't know, I work better in a mess.
And so tell me a little bit about like through this mess, like how, because the works are just like perfection. So how do you like go from the pieces on the floor to creating something that's just, because you're using like so many different mediums, you're using paint, you're using like, there's silk screening that goes on, there's so many different medias. Can you tell us more about like how then the piece gets completed?
There's a lot of trial and error. I really don't go into the studio thinking I know exactly what I'm doing today. Because I have so much stuff around, I just kind of like play around with placing things. Like I very rarely, what I do is I place a bunch of loose things, whether on the ground or sometimes I tape stuff if I'm making a painting. And then when I figured out an arrangement I like, I'll then glue it on or whatever, adhere it properly. But like I stick push pins in my paintings. I like cut up old paintings. It's very hard to say exactly what I'm doing, like, because it's kind of intuitive, but I'll like look around sometimes, like I've been making a painting and I go, I need something, and then looked at another painting, and then I don't do this often, but I've cut a piece out of the other painting to put in the painting I'm working on. Usually it's not a painting, if that happens, it's a painting that I was not that hot on, so I was like, I'll sacrifice you for you, you know? I'm not very precious about anything. Even though the work, I think, when it's finished, looks a little bit precious in that it's like just placed so, I don't work like that at all. Like, I actually don't understand sometimes when I look at the mess in the studio and then the finished piece, how it went from point A to point B.
And it's sort of interesting because an artist came one of our artists came to the gallery recently, and he was saying, Emily, I don't know, like sometimes I feel like I just don't fit into this artistic sphere, and I look at it, it was your show, it's your show that's on, so he's pointing to one of your pieces and he's like, I can see this artist, she's got it, she understands, she knows how she fits in. And it made me think of when we first met, you were saying like that you remember going to university and there was sort of a stress, not a stress, but I'm going to use the term stress, a stress about working with flowers, that was almost a taboo subject. You're a contemporary artist, how dare you work with flowers? So how do you deal with sort of those thoughts?
Well, that's funny because I don't feel like I fit in at all. So I still feel like that a little bit. If I look at other people's work, sometimes in contemporary art, there can be trends. And I often feel like I don't fit in to some of those trends. And so I felt like that person who came into the gallery lots of times. I think that sometimes if you don't fit in, that makes you stand out a little bit more because you can't find things that look exactly like, you know what I mean? Like if you can find 5 artists that have a similar style, but if you're completely different, then you have something that's just individual to you. The flower thing, I really tried so hard in university to be like dark and disturbed. I tried so hard. Like my dad has some of these paintings in his living room and they're so messed up. Like they're actually, yeah, there's this like creepy ballerina. Like it looks like, I never saw The Ring.
It's like when,
but it looks like that girl in The Ring.
Or when like the guy was in university.
Yeah, it's so weird. And then so I tried really hard. I would do things like paint this thing and then turn the painting upside down and then like pour like, you know, like floor varnish on it. Like I was trying to do everything that I was supposed to do. And then it's funny because this other guy I went to school with, he's doing really well. And both of us were told basically not to do the paintings that we now do. so he did these very intricate, almost like illustrations. And he was told, you gotta, you know, loosen up your style. It's too tight. And I was told like, it's too pretty. You have to be a little more like gritty. And then so we both graduated and then just did what we wanted. And then both of us found success in doing what we wanted. Because I think that's the most sincere thing. Like the paintings that I make now, I feel come from a way more sincere place than those dark and twisted things I was trying to do. But I do.
Dark and twisted.
Yeah, I'm not dark and twisted at all. Oh yeah, people used to come by my space in university and be like, are you okay? This doesn't seem like you at all. I was like, no, I'm fine. Like this is just, you know? But the flowers thing too, I feel, I've often wondered if I was a man, if that would change like the context of the work at all. There's something about being a woman and painting flowers that feels a little bit like, I don't know, maybe some people would think it was predictable. I don't know. There's something about it. But as I get older, I care less and less about, I've been told by people that I would, that I'm a good painter, but should change my subject matter. I've been told by a few people actually. some of those people now, the people that told me, like say a gallery, I won't name names, that told me not to do that,
Not
like
us. Not
years later will be like, oh, we'd like to show your work. And I'm like, oh, would you? So that's kind of satisfying when that happens. But yeah. You have to just stick with what you want to do. Even if, you know, people tell you, if you really think it's the right thing, then just keep, you know, I would tell that artist, like, just make what you're making and you will, I don't know, fitting in is not important.
No, and fitting in is just one of those things that's actually quite fleeting, and that when you're trying to fit in, you're actually not. Like when we met, I told you how I feel like there's many parts of us that are very similar. And when in university, I also had that moment where my parents will remember painting fetuses and being dark. It is not me. And so not only do we share a name, and we share the same year of birth, but also
we're the same person.
We're the same person, talkative, big mouth, and also I'm a huge mommy and daddy's girl, and I know that you were telling me that you're super close to your father, and that's a really big influence in your work. Oh, there's François actually showing your work.
Oh, good. Keep talking.
So
you could talk about Rick's garden.
a lot of the imagery in my work is taken from photographs from flowers in my dad's garden. So my dad is actually a photographer, and he has taken a lot of photographs of flowers. I know how dumb this sounds, but I never put two and two together until, like, I don't know, I've been painting for like 8 years or something. Someone was like, oh, your dad's a photographer and takes photos. Yeah, no joke. I didn't.
Been painting for 6? Oh, you had been. Okay.
Yeah, like at one point I had been painting for like around 8 years, and they were like, you know, your dad takes photographs of flowers and you paint flowers. And I was like, oh my God, like, how did I not put that together? But so clearly he's had some sort of influence on me. And so all the flowers. So I actually take advantage of the fact that he's a photographer, and will go home during the summer and like boss him around a bit, saying like, okay, this is my imagery, I want you to take it exactly like this, but he'll like do it with a proper lens and blah blah blah, all these things I don't understand. And like he makes, like, I look through the viewfinder and he'll be like, is this okay? And I move things around. So he helps me to document basically a lot of the floral imagery. And
you go to Hamilton and boss another guy.
Yeah, and then I go to Hamilton and boss another guy around to help me print the stuff. I'm kind of bossy. The older I got, I started reading about other artists who would get help from other people to do things that weren't part of their skill set. So I thought there were so many things that I found interesting, but I'm not like a master printer. I'm not a professional photographer. So I started kind of taking advantage of these people in my life that could help me with these things. Like, I pay the printer. I don't pay my father.
Well, but I think like, and it's funny because if we're looking at someone like random example of Jeff Koons, like, he's not doing that stuff, and it doesn't make it any less absolutely his work. And I think that there's a maturity also of reaching that level where you understand that that's not necessarily your skill set, but it would be a really good addition to your artistic practice.
Yeah, Peter was like, oh, here, we have this book just lying around. And
I have one.
I will have, basically, to create the mess in my studio, to the point where I have all these materials, I will use other people to help me acquire those materials, like the materials I use for collage. So like the silk screens, the photographs, I do like some, I don't know what it's called, I call them blueprints. It's like this weird film paper that's exposed to the sun. Do you know
I think it's called blueprints.
That's my idea.
Oh, yeah.
I stole it from Rauschenberg. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'll put that in, I'll cut those up and put them in. So basically I get help from other people to acquire all these materials, and then I have them, I do all the placing and painting and assembling. But I don't print every single piece myself because, like, I witness him do it, and I'll say, I get kind of bossy. I'll be like, this red piece of paper, I want it just cropped like this. And, you know, so he helps me he helps me print it, but I choose all the color combinations and the placement of the paper and the composition and like how the flowers are photographed. And I sort of make all those choices and then tell people how to hope they do what I want. I had to get, I did my first print session through texting the other day, which was really challenging as a sort of control freak. So I sort of said to him, here are the colors I want. I had all these Post-it notes and like instructions. And so I didn't go to Hamilton for the first time and had him, because the guy who helps me is out of town. And because of the virus, I figured it's not the best to go work with him. And so he helped me just via technology.
And how was it?
And it worked out really well. Like he would send me all these photos. Like there was one day where I didn't go to the studio. All I did was text all day long. Like, good. No, move it here. I gotta call you. You know, but it worked out.
It's interesting to see how people's, artistic practices, but also just lives have been, I mean, it's an understatement to say that our lives have been changed by COVID, but obviously for Francois and I, we're dealing with artists, and it's very interesting to see how artistic practices are changed just slightly. It's never like a massive change. Normally artists have access to the studio, but there's that human contact that's no longer there to its optimal form, and just the physicality of things where we don't get, I realize even when clients are coming to the gallery, I realize I was a toucher. Like I touch people. I'm very their bubbles, and to not have that anymore is very very bizarre. So how would you feel that throughout the last 6 months your practice has changed, except for bossing around via text?
Some of my friends texted me at the beginning of this and said, oh, you must be loving this because your regular life is like a quarantine situation. I'm a pretty like seemingly outgoing person, but I really like to be alone a lot of the time. So I didn't mind it at first, but then I realized how much you get from these small little interactions, you know what I mean? Like instead of buying certain supplies in the store and like talking to the people that work there about like, oh, what are you working on? What are you what are you blah, blah, you know, that kind of stuff. I'd be like ordering it online. It just felt so
like a penny across the street.
Yeah, like I always like I have like little rituals where I'll like go get a tea from this place every day in the afternoon, and like I would go to the studio and be like, why do I feel so nuts? It's like, oh, because I'm not eating the sour keys. I always eat at 5 o'clock or whatever. So there's certain things about my regular routine that I really miss. Like I used to drop in, Peter works at a bookstore, and I would always drop in on my way to work. It's on my way to the studio, like look at art books and magazines. Like there's certain things that you just, there's a lot of things that didn't change at all, in that I don't share my studio space with anybody, so I could be alone. Or so I didn't have to worry about being in contact with anyone. But then there's a lot of little things that you didn't even realize you relied on to kind of stay sane that are gone. And so, I don't know, you adapt. Like I've gotten sort of less twitchy in the afternoon when I normally have a tea and like a cookie or something. And now I just like plow through or bring a snack from home or whatever. But like, I don't know, it's not quite as, like everyone in the studio too, you can see that people are, like if you see someone else in the hall, you get like really like freaked out. So, or like, I've worried about getting certain deliveries, or like sometimes like the building's locked or I have to ship something, or it's logistically, it's so frustrating. And I've done things like, well, I don't want to go to the hardware store once a week. I'm going to go to the hardware store once a month and like buy as much stuff as I can. And like, I don't know, it's changed stuff. I've adapted, but I mean, there isn't like a day where I wish it would go back to normal. You know?
Yeah, I think that this, I mean, we keep using the term new normal. It sort of is what it is at this point, and hopefully is healthy at home. I want to circle back to something that you said slightly earlier, where you were saying, I wonder if I were a man, if the perspective would be different. And I was reading an article today just on a completely different topic, where I'm realizing that women are still referred to as
Women artists?
Women artists, female artists, and men are just artists. And when we were applying to Art Toronto, I just called Francois today to discuss this, where it says like you have to identify the sex of your artist. And I was like, I'm gonna make a stand, I'm not gonna write it. And then Francois was like, just don't be a jerk, just put it in. And so I did, and we're 50-50 guys, 50 men, 50 women. But how do you feel about, is that still a thing? Do we still ask that? How do you feel about being a woman in the art world?
I have, like, if I get an interview, like during COVID, I've been asked to do so many interviews, and mostly that just means we're going to send you a list of questions and then you're going to spend time answering them, and then we're going to publish them online, which is nice because I've learned a lot about my practice, even just things I don't normally think of by doing this. But whenever they send me a woman artist question, I'll like change the question.
Yes.
Like, I just don't answer that. There's something about it that really irritates me. Like, who cares? You know? I don't know. I don't like that. Like you said, no one says, like, how do you feel being a male artist? It's like, no one says that to anybody. And also, I don't know, it just doesn't seem very modern to ask something like that.
I agree. I think that we're in 2020, and it's not pertinent anymore. And yet, like, my son's 3.5, he just discovered some people have penises and some people don't. So, like, you know what? It's always a thing. Men and women are different. So I guess it's still something that we're talking about even today.
Yeah, but I will try really hard to not answer those questions, or try to rephrase the question, or it's not my favorite thing. Like, I've been asked specifically, can we write about, like, we want to put you in an article about woman artists, and I'm like, like, I've said no to some stuff, but, you know, that I maybe should, I don't know. But I find it kind of irritating. It's less irritating now because I kind of expect some of it to a degree, and I do think it's very good to highlight, like, all different kinds of artists, you know, but we should all just be artists.
Can I ask a quick question?
Oh, yeah.
Your own personal taste with the artists that you tend to like and the work, do you tend to gravitate more towards women artists? Or is it just a mixed bag and it doesn't really matter?
I would say contemporary artists, yes. Contemporary artists, it's a mixed bag. But like older artists, I would say more male, simply because they were given more space in like the context of art history. Like, there's more male artists to, from a certain time period to, I don't know, their work was more out there for you to see. Like who's Warhol's female contemporary? You know what I mean? Like, he has them, but they're not talked about as much. And so I found, like, in school, maybe I gravitated more towards male artists, but then when I got out into out of school into the real world, I was like, oh my God, like present day contemporary artists, there's so many great people. It's like, I don't like somebody just because I'm like, I should look up more women artists, or I should look up more, what, you know, I just like a sort of a whole bunch of people, and it just turns out that there's a mixed bag in there.
Well, and I think that we're seeing that also even in the context of Black Lives Matter, where we're definitely having an awareness of, hey, there's a certain percent of the population that I have been not looking at. I have not been adding that to just my visual content. And then once you turn on that switch, hopefully we get to a point where it's exactly like you're saying now, where it's not decisions, it's just all part of options that are readily available. So going into like heavy topics right off the bat, and so, like, what would you say is different from like your artistic practice from when you were in school to now being completely independent, doing your own thing?
What's different? I mean, I worried too much in school about what other people thought. Like, I worried, like, I'm like I want to impress my professor. Like, you know, if I wasn't like that, I probably wouldn't have made those dark, ridiculous paintings. Yeah. I'm like such a like teacher's pet, overachiever. Like, even now, I think that's like in you, and you can't, like, if my gallery, like, if you guys were like, we need something like this, I'll be like, I'll do it. You know what I mean? Like, but how is it different? It's like you can you don't have to answer to anybody really. Like you sort of have to answer to your galleries. I'm gonna do what you want, but not as much, and not like, you just have more freedom. And also,
are we bossy people?
No, but you'd be surprised at what some people ask you to do.
Yeah,
some of them are crazy. Like
I've
been a full-time artist now for almost 15 years, and some of the things that I've been asked to do over the course of the 15 years, like we could, like, my artist friends and I get together, we could write a book about crazy stories and like emails you receive. But
Saks Fifth Avenue.
Oh yeah. Like I did this stupid thing. Saks Fifth Avenue contacted me. And for the record, this was really stupid. But they wanted me to paint people's Alabama Michelle's laughing. So they're like, we want you to come to the store and paint people's jeans after they buy them. And I was like, so let me get this straight. Somebody is going to buy a $300 pair of jeans from Saks Fifth Avenue, and you want me to paint on them? And you think anyone's going to want me to do this? So then I was like, guys, no one's going to want this. So then I quote them something ridiculous, because I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, like, okay, sure. So I quote them something, and then they agree to it. And then when I go to Saks Fifth Avenue, they have this table for me with this big sign, like, meet Emily Filler. And I was like, they don't, like, I'm not famous. And so not one person wanted their jeans painted. And so at the end of the day, the manager or whatever comes, I'm really sorry. And I was like, listen, I could have called this. Like, I don't mind. I just sat around and you paid me to, you know. At one point, my friend came to visit me and I just went out for coffee for 2 hours. It was so dumb. And so sometimes what I'm trying in a roundabout way to say is sometimes you get dumb requests.
I feel like we need to post this video and tag.
No, don't tag Saks Fifth Avenue. I love you. And then right after
the
that.
print was really nice.
Oh, yeah, I did a print. So I said to them, I was like, this makes no sense. I'll do a small print that people get when they buy their jeans. And a lot of people wanted those, but no one wanted their jeans.
So how do you feel like your artistic practice, like, different. How do you see it going forward?
I kind of wanted, before this, I was planning on doing some ceramics. I had this idea to print on silk scarves. I had all these ideas that also require me to work with other people that I feel like are kind of postponed right now because we're not supposed to be, you know, I don't want to work closely with a ceramicist and then it just doesn't make sense at the moment. So I would just like to build on things, create new series, use different mediums, I don't know what to say. And I don't know, just, I don't really feel like I have a shortage of ideas at the moment. I kind of sometimes have a shortage of time to execute everything.
Can I just say that I completely support the idea of ceramics? That sounds awesome. I love it.
Yeah, because it kind of like, I can take most mediums and think of a way that it like would relate to the stuff I make. In a way that I would, get excited about.
On the chat is like, we want jeans now.
Yeah, everyone wants. Send in your jeans.
You also did a Gap jean jacket.
Oh yeah, I did think for Gap. Then Topshop contacted me. Like, I'm not trying to be like, look how great I am. I was like, what is wrong with these companies? They all wanted me to paint denim.
Well,
look, I don't know what about my work is denim related.
We paid for this already. It's only fair that we get free jeans.
Everyone, I should put out a jeans line. Yeah.
Do you feel that over the years that your work is going to become a lot more abstract, or do you think you're going to keep mixing in with florals and still lifes, or do you think you're pushing yourself more towards abstract?
It's another man trying to push you away.
Yeah, another man trying to push me away from flowers. No, I
Whoa.
Yeah. No, that's what Peter said, but
I've asked her the same thing.
Yeah, he's asked me the same thing before, and I just went nuts. I was like, what? Because you know who always asks those questions? Men always ask those questions. But I do like doing abstract.
We're doing for you, François.
I do like, I had a lot of fun making those smaller abstract pieces that are in the show.
Yeah.
I think truly a good abstract artist has like my deepest respect as an artist, because to make a good abstract painting is so hard. It's so much easier when you have some representational thing that you can build off of and create a composition around. To have like nothing, oh man, like the people that do it well, they're the, like, sort of like, I bow to them, you know?
Well, you just sent us a photo of a huge abstract painting that's to die for.
Oh,
like,
thanks. But there is representational stuff in there.
But this is like, it's definitely part of your language, like, absolutely. And like the fact that you were doing those studies. Oh, actually, that leads me to studies, because those small abstract paintings are sort of studies for something more, and then we have the small color studies that are so unique and powerful on their own. And there's a really good story, and I know you've said it 1,000 times, but please tell us the story of the color studies again, because it's a good one and I like it.
Okay, the color studies are like these small, maybe like postcard size abstract pieces. Oh, are you going to get the one out of the bathroom? I always put one in my bathroom. So what happened was I graduated from school and I felt like I had no structure anymore, and I'm pretty disciplined as a person, but
Do you have others? Yeah, usually.
No,
that's this is a particularly glamorous one.
Oh yeah, this is a framed one I have in my bathroom. The other day, Peter was like, "Did you paint this?" I was like, "No, Jasper Johns did," and I cut it out of a magazine. So there was this thing on Instagram. I had just joined Instagram, and there was this thing like the 100-day project, and this woman was like, "Make the same thing, like something of, like choose something you're going to make and do it every day for 100 days." And so I was like, all right, I'm going to make 100 collages in 100 days. And that was challenging. And I used sort of like, because it was a project I was doing just for myself, I used things that I probably wouldn't normally use in my regular work. Like I cut up magazines and old wrapping paper and like things I had lying around the house. And I had done no collage work before that point. And so it was really fun exercise of like placing things and mixing patterns and colors. And so they kind of evolved. And then when the project was over, I liked it so much that I kept doing it, you know, every once in a while on the weekend or something. And then I still do them. I do those in my house and not in my studio, because I consider it like a separate thing. And I also like doing them at my kitchen table when I'm watching like TV or something. That's the only thing I do not in the studio. Like I'm fully in the studio. Like iPad drawings. Oh yeah, the iPad drawings too. I do those in front of the TV. So, and then it bled into my regular work. So then I started doing, like when I'd have a problem at the studio with a painting, I'm like, you know, it would be good if I could just cut this up like those tiny color studies. So I started using collage as like a way to solve compositional problems that I was having in my work, or like add interest. And then I just started collaging more and more and more into my paintings. And then I was having breakfast with a printmaker friend of mine, and he's like, you know, you're not even a painter anymore, really, you're a collage artist. And I was like, oh my God. Especially because in university, that was the type of, collage was not considered, if you were like, my whole thesis is like collage, they'd be like, no.
Like flowers.
So yeah, collage and flowers, they'd be like, no. So it just kind of found its way into my work. Like the project, I don't know what my work would be like now if I didn't do that project. That project changed my work completely. Like there's a distinct change that you can see between when I started doing that and before that. And also I have this thing, which is not, I don't want it to sound arrogant or everything, but I sometimes think about my career as like, if I had a retrospective. I know that sounds crazy, but there's certain paintings that I made earlier on in my career that I completely stopped making. And people have asked me, oh, do you remember these paintings? Will you make those again? Can I commission one? Blah, blah, blah. And I'll be like, no, I'm done making those, because in my head, those belong in like a room in my retrospective. Like between the years of this and this, she did this. And then, you know what I mean? So I don't want to like, and some of the people on this Zoom have a painting from that series.
DJ.
So I just wanted to kind of cut it off. So I still, even every once in a while, get contacted like, would you take a commission and make one of these? And I'm like, no, I won't, because that's to me like a fixed time.
Yes, I completely agree with you. I sometimes dream of having black and white photos of Francois and I'm smoking a cigarette, and it's going to be like, wow, the art dealer is like, I don't even smoke. There's no black and white photos, but I like it. I like the retrospective. I can see it. We have a lot of questions here in the chat, and so you actually.
I'm not reading it.
No, I am. So we actually
Everyone's
have a lot of, you'll see there's some jokes right now. But so you talked about collage sort of being introduced because of the color studies. And so there's someone asking if you were a scrapbooker as a child. So I would take it as a probably not.
No, I remember distinctly, you know that show Fred Penner or something? He had like, he climbed through a log or whatever into this magical land. He made collages once in an episode of this show. And I remember that I have very bad memory, but I remember this. And I was like, oh my God, I got to do that. So I collected, he's like, just collect stuff out of your house, kids, blah, blah, blah. So my mother used to travel to, like at one point had traveled to India and had brought back someone very important to her had given her these like flower petals that were dried. And I went around and I know Michelle's like dying. I took them and then glued them into this thing. And it was the only time I ever saw my mother like visibly upset. Like she wasn't mad at me, but you could tell I had done something really bad. And so she like, then I was like, oh, I threw the collage out because it wasn't very good. And then she like picked through every piece of garbage to like find these things. And so after that, I just never made another collage. I don't know if that's why. I was like, only bad things can come from making a collage.
I remember my parents are here, they're right below me in my screen. I remember the only spanking I ever got in my life was because I drew X's and O's and hearts and flowers for my mom on a table. It was not appreciated.
Yeah, no.
Like it. So now I'm an art dealer, not an artist. Doug says that mothers are very influential. They sure are. So someone anonymous has asked, how are your flowers selected? And what's your favorite flower? And are they from your dad's photos? And it might be your dad that asked the question.
Okay, I love peonies. I don't actually use them in my work because they don't photograph well. I like things that will have a lot of contrast for the silk screening element. And so peonies are such that it would just kind of photograph like a giant blob. So I like the kind of baby's breath, like wispy flowers a lot. And I tend to like for my work flowers that are, I'm sure there's a name for these, but distinctly like petals, like a daisy type formation. I like those a lot. But some of my favorite flowers I don't find they photograph nicely. Like anyone who takes pictures, if you take a photo of a red flower, that's gonna be bad. Like the contrast is so bad. Like you need a white flower or like a light pink or light yellow. Because I'm always trying to like up the contrast for the printmaking.
Well, and actually speaking about color, you and I were having a conversation about one of your collectors who's here in the chat room, who is colorblind, and there's certain colors that she can't see. And while we were having that discussion where it was reds and greens, and
she's here in the chat.
You got the piece, by the way.
Yay!
So you were noticing throughout that you actually had a lot more red and green that you even ever thought about having it. So are there certain colors that you tend to gravitate more towards, or colors that you hate?
I hate certain, yes. I will say that my favorite colors as a child are now my least favorite colors. What was I thinking? Like I remember my friends and I were so obsessed with like aqua, you know? Or like, oh, aqua, the most beautiful color ever. I don't know why we even talked about this, like what kind of children we were like talking about colors, but now I really don't like, I don't like, there's a certain blue I really dislike, and I'm not really hot on like purple. Like, there's certain purples I like, but there's this one purple, it's hard to explain, but it's like a bluey purple. I don't love orange. I'm trying to love orange.
You told me last week your favorite piece in the show is the purple one.
Oh, I love that one. I know, but that's a purple I
Show
like.
it.
There's this other purple I can't stand. I don't use it, but I like mustard a lot.
Yeah.
I like pink, like a bubblegum pink. I like that color a lot. I like olive green. I have this theory that no color is ugly if you put it next to the right color.
Yeah.
So like you can take this color that's hideous, like bright orange is a lot, but if you put it next to like a muted olivey gray, like it's beautiful. Like there's certain, you can take any color that's a disaster and just put it next to another color, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, yeah, that purple one, I love it. I almost didn't send it and kept it.
So actually, I'm losing track of all these questions. So what do you use to affix your collage to the paintings? And do you frame your collage pieces with glass?
I do frame my collage pieces with glass. That can sometimes be a disaster when you're shipping things. I have not found a good way to frame with plexiglass yet.
The paintings are also collage. You should.
Oh yeah, the paintings I frame too. Those aren't under glass. So wait, what's the rest of the question, sorry?
So what do you use to affix your collage to the painting?
So I use, you have to be careful what you use because you want it to be archival. Like everyone's obsessed with things being archival. And also I would never want something to peel off unintentionally. I would never intend for things to peel off, but like, so for paper, I use rice glue. There's very good rice glue sticks on the market if there's any artists in this chat. And for the canvas, I use it's like a gel medium that's got like some, it's a bit elastic. Like it really glues. Like if I try to take off a piece, I have to use pliers and like pull as hard as I can to rip it off. Like it really.
That's what I want to hear.
Stays on. Like it's really on there.
Is that the matte medium?
Yeah, but that if you, because what I do is I sometimes adhere them before I stretch it, and so I can stretch it and it really, like it sort of gives with the canvas a bit. I have in the past tried just for kicks white glue. Don't do that. Never use white glue for anything. White glue in canvas is it's brittle, it's a disaster.
I would have had a little bit of heart failure if right now live.
I was like, I use white glue. No, I don't.
We have a question here from Bob, who's asking about the Hamilton connection. Tell us
yeah. The Hamilton connection is I had just been to a Warhol show in New York and decided that I was now going to screen print on canvas. I had this idea in my head, like, okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm stealing from Warhol. And then I went to my friend's opening and he does these very intricate etchings. And he said, oh, I got this guy to print them for me. Meet him. Like we went to the opening and I met this guy. And he was so nice. And I just connected with him. We were just yapping about like artsy stuff. And then I said, would you ever consider doing screen print for somebody? And he said, sure, like I know how to do that. Kind of like implying like compared to etching, it's pretty straightforward. And I had done screen print in school, but I don't have access to, there's a place in Toronto that provides screen printing called Open Studio, but they said that because I was so far out of school that I would have to take like a course there before they would let me use the facilities. And I was like, never mind, going with this other guy. And so he's like, all you have to do is come to Hamilton. And he's like, it's just like a 45-minute bus ride. And so honestly,
was that the first time you've been to Hamilton?
Yeah, it was the first time I went to Hamilton. And there's something about being on a bus and you're on your way to make stuff and it just feels like I don't know, it feels like exciting. And so I love going there. And so I go and work with this guy, and he has this whole setup in Hamilton. Oh yeah, I made the piece behind Francois, I made with that guy.
It's awesome. I love it.
So he, because you need so much space to have all kinds of printing presses, and like studio space is so expensive in Toronto, but it's cheaper in Hamilton, which is about, I don't know, like an hour outside of Toronto for 45 minutes. He has this huge setup in this beautiful old factory, like with multiple rooms. Like his brother does like digital printing. He does analog
Smokestack Studios.
Oh, it's called Smokestack Studios.
People can follow him on Instagram.
Oh yeah, follow him on Instagram. Smokestack Studios. He's the best. Peter will put it in the... Yeah, and honestly, like going to Hamilton has been so much fun. And then because of where...
Emily Filler only.
Pardon?
That Emily Filler only.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, that's private?
Oh yeah, figure it out. So yeah, and then I got to like hang out in Hamilton, and then I met Peter, who's from Hamilton, coincidentally, and it was like a big. Now Hamilton is like a part of my life.
And Bob and Sheila.
And Bob and Sheila. So
Hamilton's awesome.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So we have a really good question from Kyle, and because I think anyone who's on the Zoom right now is thinking, oh my God, Emily Filler is so nice and she's so bubbly, and it is true. And I think that
that's not true.
But I think that like you have like this extremely positive energy, and it's just very invigorating. And how do you keep this upbeat tone all the time? And has sort of the pandemic changed that?
I don't.
But like
the answer to that.
BJ's
BJ is like one of my best friends. BJ is like, yeah, right. Okay, I will say this. I am
he's like crying.
An extreme person. So either like it's very rare that I'm like medium, you know,
there's
like
a lot of messes from the people who know you.
Yeah, it's very rare that I'm like, how are things? They're fine. Like Peter's always telling me like, can you keep your volume lower? Like you're too much. And so either I'm like just overjoyed, or I'm like so angry or like hysterical. It's just, I'm not going to come on here and be like, I'm so anxious. You know what I mean? So I'm not always bubbly and fun.
I've only known you to be bubbly and fun. I have not had the opposite side yet.
But I will say I'm very rarely like a 5. It's like one or the other.
Well, then you're a 10, so that's good.
But I will say that the pandemic, I'm a pretty anxious, like, in terms of being cautious and being, like, if somebody says, like, you know, this might happen to you, but you can prevent it from doing this, I'll do it, like, to the extreme. Like, I'll think, like, Michelle's like me. She's like, yes, yes, yes. So this has really... I don't know. I'm kind of sick of this. Like, there's some people that I know are continuing pretty much like normal, but I just can't do that and feel okay about it. So, I think everyone's just tired of it. So it's definitely weighed me down. And like, although the studio oddly brings me, I always feel happy there. Even when I'm like on a deadline or a painting is crap, it's always just so nice to be there. It's like painting is my friend.
Has a good question. Do you have a favorite tool in your studio?
I do. I have this old pair of scissors. This is like a tearjerker, but I have this old pair of scissors that I used to do crafts with my mom with these scissors. Yeah, I know, my kid's sad. And my mom died when I was younger. So I kept these scissors, and over the years, like the tongs or whatever, like this part has broken off. Like I use them for everything. Like I use them to take staples out of the back of a canvas that I use them to cut up paper. I use them, I don't know, I use them for so much stuff. I use them when I'm framing to like push down on it. Like I use them for everything. And like, it's the only thing in my studio that every night before I leave, I make sure that's put away in a certain spot, because like sometimes I pick up a bunch of stuff and put it in a trash bag. Like if I ever threw those out, I'd be so upset. So if I can't find them, like I won't leave until I find them. So like I won't throw garbage until I find them. So I'm like, no, I don't throw them out. So those are my very favorite thing. These old scissors that are basically like not sharp. The tips are busted off. Yeah. And then
How
also,
did you know this? This was like,
yeah.
That's a good question.
what a good question. So sort of to end off, is there, like, is there anything that you wanted us to, like, you know, I feel like there's always, like, you go into an interview or people ask you questions and you're like, now why didn't they ask that? This is the question I want to answer. That was a hard question, sorry.
I would say, if I always try to like give a tip for like the artists out there. I don't know if anyone on here is an artist.
Yeah, we do have artists.
But like, for example, when I mentioned that I went to see this Warhol show and then decided to become like to silk screen things, and I really thought, I'm like, oh, these are going to be amazing. And then when I got them back, I'm like, Warhol was better than, you know, like he had something that I just don't have. So, and also like various things, like he used like oil-based inks and I used acrylic-based inks, like so many different things. And so when I got the pieces back, I was kind of disappointed and I was like, these aren't very exciting. And that's what made me start cutting up the canvas and like laying it on top to like make it more interesting basically. And so I always think like some people get like frozen when something they're doing isn't working, but like if you just sit there and like, and I think this can apply to like other aspects of your life. Like if something's not working and you just sort of like sit around and think about it, or like kind of just flip it around and like move things around, like you can come up with like the best stuff out of the stuff that is a complete failure. Like if you, like I got back and thought like, well, there's a huge waste of money on canvas and like what a dumb idea, you know. And now I do that. That's like a huge part of my work. So I don't know, I just think like so many times I think the instinct is to like give up, but if you just don't give up, that's my like.
Would you say that, like, because sometimes when like things are not going well in the studio, would you be the type to be like, I'm gonna wrap this up and I'm gonna go home, tomorrow will be a fresh day, or do you just keep on pounding through?
No, I'm the person who's like, I'm gonna kill myself. I'll be like, I'm gonna stay here until it looks good, and then it makes it look way worse. And then I'm the person who, if you want to know if I'm always happy, this is the person I am. I'm the person that's like, okay, you know what's happening to you? And like I'm talking to the painting, and then I take an X-Acto knife and like just cut it up. And then I'm like so relieved. And then I like to like, some people are like, I'll let it dry and paint over it. I'm like, no, destroyed. Like oh man, I love destroying a painting. It makes me so happy. It makes me sound crazy, but like it's so much more satisfying to take something that's ugly and destroy it than to be like, I'll rework it. Like, meh. Which kind of goes against what I previously said, but not entirely. There's a fine line.
Well, on the note of Emily being like the angry destroyer, one of the things that I always do for every Zoom is, whoops, I just did it right now. That's not what I wanted to do. I like to take a screenshot of everyone smiling, and I let you know so no one's looking dumb on the photo. So I'm just gonna go ahead. If you have a glass of wine, bring it up, and we're going to do a cheers. Give me a second, guys. I'm getting ready. I'm going to tell you when. Smile. Like Emily Filler doesn't smile on time.
I didn't smile?
That's okay.
Was that what happened? Oh, sorry.
So have a great night. If anyone has any sort of last minute questions, now's the time.
I just want to say that from a professional point of view, dealing with Emily on a day-to-day basis, because Emily and I talk to Emily pretty much about 4 or 5 times a week, is an absolute delight. She's a true pro, and she's always pleasant to deal with. Maybe she's screaming and ripping things up in the studio, but when she picks up the phone, it's always like, so from our perspective, we absolutely love working with Emily.
Oh, thanks. That's nice. I love working with you guys too.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you again.
Bye.
I am.
Bye.
Bye.